Alec, welcome to our Chance Time review. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Mm-hmm.
here. Last week we spun that wheel behind me and I decided a random movie we're going to have to watch and review right now. And
Yep.
that movie was a 1988 movie starring Jodie Foster. It's called The Accused. All right.
And I think I somehow confused Jodie Foster with Jane Fonda when I was talking in my mind. I
Jane
was like in my
Fonda.
mind, yeah. I think JF is the JF. It's the actresses with the
Sure.
sure,
Sure. It's
yeah.
a movie about a woman who's brutally gang raped in a bar. And that's where our movie starts and that's where our movie ends. All
Yeah.
right, let's see how our scores, how we're feeling right now, and we can change
Okay.
them at the end if we change our mind when we're
We
locking
call
in.
her gut check.
Gut check. 7 and 8. All right, all right. We like that. We like to see that.
Yeah. So well, first of all, my characterization of what I thought this movie was. I didn't hear what your description was totally. I thought it was going to be rape revenge.
Right.
Ended up not being that. In fact, it ended up being the opposite of that. Like not
Rape,
not that necessarily the
rape,
opposite of that, but it
avenge.
was rape, uh, legal ends,
Mm-hmm.
legal. Yeah, it was a courtroom drama basically, and not the best courtroom drama I've ever seen in my life, but
Yeah, it's between this one and
Joe.
Liar Liar.
Why?
It's right up
Why
there.
would you say that? Anyway, no, it's not Liar Liar. But I think Jodie Foster is amazing in this movie. First of all, that like she totally like she's the whole reason the movie like works at
Yeah,
all. I think.
I think she won an Oscar for this role.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can understand why. She's incredible here. I think a lot of the rest of the supplementary cast is like a little cliche, like in terms of like its general characterization, everything. It feels very much like a oh the woman lawyers trying to plead her case because she then I I will say I actually liked how the first 30 minutes of it sort of the 40 minutes of the movie sort of subvert your expectation in terms of like how you think it's going to go. You almost feel like this woman is going to fight for her from the beginning, but she kind of doesn't. Um, and I actually liked that because it felt like real. It felt real in a lot of ways, in a way that is supposed to make you mad as the audience, and I think it's very does a very good job at doing that. Um, so yeah.
Hmm.
Add to that one of the most uncomfortable scenes I may have ever seen in a motion picture. Um, yeah, I thought it was great. I thought this movie was excellent
Hmm. So
in a lot of ways.
in the beginning, when when she first runs out of there and you see her in the hospital, it
Yeah.
was really effective at showing how like dehumanizing that process is. It's like
Yeah.
they just had no regard. They were just like fire off questions while we're like looking all up on you and touching on you, like examining you and everything. It's just
Hmm.
like right now do this. No, 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 pull this open. Like, and it was like it was very much like okay, set the tone right there. But I
Yeah. But
also
there's like
thought
zero compassion for her, basically.
we kind of got out. I was like, oh, we started. I was like, I know we were saying before this, like we know how this movie's gonna start because the description says she's brutally gang raped and whatnot. And I was like, oh, we got out of scot free. We only saw after she ran out, or we don't have to actually watch it happen. But they got us. They got they get us
Yeah.
later with it, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I, I
first of all
I
much more
actually
effective in
I think
how
it
it
was
did.
extremely effective to do it that way.
Yeah,
I actually liked that the film didn't start off with it because I feel like that would have been well that would have been cheap sleaze, right? Like you would have felt like kind of gross if the
right.
movie opens on that. But like having it sort of build up the tension build up to like because we already know because she's sort of told through a lot of ways and other characters have sort of told what happened, but that we're seeing it from the perspective of the guy who called. I guess spoilers for the movie, but um, the guy who called on the phone was the main witness, but he didn't really. He felt like he didn't want to be a witness because like his friend was one of the people. One of his friends was one of the people that was involved. So like he was kind of being a kind of a sissy about it. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a lot more effective that it did it that way because it made it. I think that made it like all the more like heartrending and like uncomfortable because we've gotten all the build up to it.
Yeah.
That yeah.
So yeah, when they did that though, it was like because I was when I heard the description of the movie, I was not looking forward to having to watch the scene right out of
Right.
the gate. Like this is the groundwork to, because yeah, like I didn't know it was gonna end up being mostly a courtroom drama either. So it was like
Mm.
expecting like we're seeing this to set the rest of the movie up. But I
Right.
was like,
Lesser movies in the 70s and 80s did that. They
mhm.
would start the movie off with actually showing it.
But like
That
I wasn't looking forward to watching a scene like that
yeah.
to start off a movie. So I was like, oof, all right. And then, but then when it happens, I'm like, oh shoot, we're seeing
Yeah.
everything, and it was like
Yeah.
felt like one of the longest scenes I've ever watched.
Oh, it's
It went on
awful.
so
It went
long.
on. It did, and that's. I think the point of that was super. Was I think one of the reasons why that was so poignant was because there was so much time for somebody to do literally anything, and no one did anything.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what it was. And
Yeah.
but I mean, big ups to Jodie Foster. That had to be a really hard scene
That
to film
that had to have been brutal, especially because like
because she was like actually exposed
yeah,
and all
A-
this.
and at that time, I don't know all the remember all the inner workings of Hollywood, but I don't think there was such a thing as an intimacy coordinator at that period of
Right. That's what
time.
I was thinking
That's a
too.
much
Yeah.
newer that's a much newer thing. So that must have been just like super uncomfortable to do. So it's like I'm sure there was a lot of talking about that still, but that still must have been very hard to film having that done.
Yeah, especially during the time this is late '80s. Like this is,
Mm,
I mean, as you could even see with how people talked about it within the movie, like it still was
yeah,
not like we're still not perfect in that in that regard, obviously. But
yeah,
the culture was even worse back then in terms of like talking about it. You know, like she
right,
was asking for it, that type of thing. So there's already a lack of compassion kind of built into it. So
right.
it's gonna be even harder to like willingly go into do a scene like that. So I mean, very effective of being an uncomfortable scene, but
Yeah.
that's my biggest problem with this movie is that I can't say like I was enjoying the movie. That's my only thing. Is like on a personal preference. I just don't know if I could easily suggest someone to watch this movie
Hmm.
or want to watch it again just because it was so uncomfortable at times, and I feel like I know because I was originally planning on watching this with my girlfriend, and in
Hmm.
retrospect, I'm kind of glad I didn't because I know she really wouldn't like a movie like this. So it would probably be really rough to watch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
That's
the only
actually
problem I
that
have.
that's actually interesting because that's actually what I liked about it.
That it's hard. Yeah,
I
it's hard
liked
to
that it
watch.
wasn't. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
liked that it was. Because it gave you it put you in the shoes of somebody that has had to deal with something like this, right? It makes you
Yeah.
it puts you in the shoes of somebody that has basically no one believes in her or is fighting for her except for like people out on the fringes kind of are still helping. Like her friend sort of is helping a little bit, and the lawyer lady eventually comes around to helping her when she is realizing like this is it's particularly when she comes across the guy that she ran into. um so okay, so to I guess to back up a little bit, so after this happens, she is able to like kind of figure out, she points to all the three people that raped her, and the people that are implicated in the crime. um there's so there's the prosecuting and the defense attorneys. So the prosecution feels like they have a very difficult case ahead of them because there's a lot of factors in everything leading up to the event that a jury is not going to look kindly on, and may even rule in favor of the defense in such a way because of just how the lack of substantial witnesses or witnesses willing to testify in on the side of the prosecution, um, and just in terms of the general temperament of the victim, where they think that there's just too many factors that play into it, so that that they feel like jury's not going to look very kindly on it. So the defense comes. There's a meeting. The defense and the prosecution sort of come to terms, where it's like, what will you take? What's the like, what bargain will you take? And essentially, the perpetrators get off with a sentence that carries the same prison sentence, but without the sexual element. They call it reckless endangerment instead of sexual assault or rape or anything like that. And the defense's reason is like, oh, well, one of them's like, as in college, and he's got a bright future ahead of him. I'm like, cool. Maybe he shouldn't have been raping somebody in a bar. That's what I would have been like. All right, great, good for him. Maybe he should have thought of that about that before he, was assaulting a woman.
And you always
But
see that when people commit the most
yeah,
heinous crimes, like the people defending them will be like, "Please, he's got a perfect. He's an A plus student. He's got a perfect
right,
record, you know."
and that's one of the things too that I can't I can understand, but I also can't get behind the the logic of the guy who's like, well, I don't want to sell out my friend. I'm like, no, you sell out your friend.
In a heartbeat, I'd
You
sell
sell
the.
out like look, I'm somebody that I'm somebody, one of the people that values loyalty. I almost value loyalty above truth in a lot of ways, like telling the truth. This is something that you cannot, like, being loyal to your friend, that's not loyalty. He's broken every reason for you to be loyal to him now because of what you saw him do. You have being loyal to him is making sure that he is kept behind bars and that he has the sentence that he deserves from what he did. That's being loyal to him because that's what he deserves at that point. Like, I just can't get behind, like, oh, I can't do that. And thankfully he comes around. He
Yeah,
finally realizes that, yeah, he has to do it. But it's just like, I just can't get behind that logic at all. Like, I'm like, no, I'd sell out my friend in a heartbeat for doing something like
that's
that.
what I was
Absolutely.
thinking when the guy Bob, yeah, the guy who did it, he's like
Mm-hmm.
talking to him on the phone at the jail, and he's like, "What do you want to be talking to me like this for the next 5 years?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to be talking to you at all." That's what I would be saying. Like,
Yeah,
I'm fine
yeah.
with not talking to you for the next 5 years.
Yeah, actually, I'm
Especially,
okay.
I don't have to
Yeah.
keep. I'm not obligated to keep coming back and talking to you, like work you through this. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting, and I mean, feels more like a product of the times as well too,
Mm.
where like the fact is like, oh, my buddy he just raped someone, so it's like, it's like, I'm not,
Whatever.
who am I to say? Who am I to
Yeah,
speak
but
up
he's
about it?
also but he clearly did it's I think it's interesting. I didn't really care for his characterization in like the third act so much, but I did think it was interesting that he was the person who had the anonymous phone call in general.
Ken, yeah, it was
Like,
Ken.
Ken. um and so it's like, okay, well, you do know that what he was doing was wrong. So, because you freaking called the police, like, you called 911 on it
Right.
because of what was going on. So, like, you knew it was something that constituted emergency. What I guess because of the anonymity of that, I guess maybe that's what sort of
He said he was
felt
scared. You know,
yeah.
the fact that it's kind of sad he wanted to also keep his friend at the same time. Like,
Yeah,
clearly protecting this guy, even though he was not worth protecting at all.
right.
And then you had the scene with this other guy, the sleazeball, watching it all, rooting it on. You have the guy
Yeah.
in the truck. That
Yeah,
was a whole
so
scene too.
yeah, so he God, yeah, that was messed up. So that scene was like, I thought that was really effective at being how uncomfortable it was. Where it was like, man, she's never going to be able to run away from this until these people, and that's why. So
Yeah.
after that all happens, Jodie Foster's what's her name again? Remind me. Remember her
Sarah.
name? Sarah. Um, she cuts off all her hair, and she's just like going like buying like records or something, buying like cassette tapes, and she comes across some guy. Some guy's like kind of hitting on her a little bit, and she's kind of humoring him a little bit. She's like, yeah, all right, he's just a guy, he's whatever, I can handle that. And then he starts saying some like stuff that's like a lot worse, and then he's like, oh, that's right, I know who you were now. You're that girl that was
Putting on
getting
a show.
raped.
Yeah.
He's putting on a show. And he's like, hell yeah. And then he gets even like weirder and creepier. He's like blocking her to get out of the way. I was like, what did he expect at that point?
Yeah.
What did he expect? Did he expect her to just, I don't know, like just wait there? He's blocking traffic. I would have run into him too.
Eventually, someone else is gonna realize he's blocking it as well.
I would have aimed towards the door earlier.
I know.
I was like, this guy deserves to get.
I was like, damn, she
so
fucked up her
pain.
car instantly though. That first hit, it was just smoke popped up. It was like, oh damn, right?
Yeah. So yeah, he's a big creep. But that's so the prosecuting attorney then like kind of comes along and finds out that all this happened, and then the guy basically brags about that he was there,
right?
More or less, and then she realizes, oh. This is something that's never going to go away unless something's done about it. So,
yeah, we got these people just walking the streets who are openly applauding and cheering for this rape. Yeah, and he had the scorpion tattoo, which the friend identified. The whole thing with the friend was tough too. Like she kind of left her out to dry a little bit, and then came back and was gonna like testify for her. But then they basically find out that she can be used against her, basically.
Yeah.
Which is annoying. You know, I feel like it would be hard to see that happening today more so. It's the fact that you just like...
I think the facts of the case are just like, oh, well, she was drunk. But it's like, but yeah, she was drunk. So that means she wouldn't have been able to consent to any of the things that were being done to her.
Yeah.
So it's like she was putting on a show. It's like, okay, so does that make it then okay for the men who were there to be taking advantage of her in that state, even if they too were drunk?
Yeah.
Like that. Like there's the line. The lines are like too blurry there to rule in the defense's line there. I think. And again, I think that's a lot of. I think we've come further along in that dialogue now than we were in the 80s.
Definitely further. I mean, the rape culture is it was so backwards back then, to where it's like people would always justify like these rapes by saying like the guy was drunk or she was drunk. Like it's like whatever way benefits them, they'll just say the person they need to be drunk is drunk. So it's like, well, either he was drunk, so it's like he didn't have full control over it, or she was drunk, and so she was there for it. You know, it was like that's whatever fit their narrative is what they would. That was constantly what it was, and then victims would be shamed because of it, and all these things.
Right.
So that's tough. It's tough. And
I'm of the opinion that rapists should be put to death.
Yeah.
I think they deserve the death penalty, like straight up.
Yeah, we're talking about 5 years. We're talking about 5 years in this damn movie.
Yeah, it's like no, these people deserve to be put to death for this. I think, like to me, it's like that's murder and rape are like some of the worst crimes you could do. So those are like the worst things you can do to somebody, basically. So, horrible, just horrible.
I'm only against the death penalty in the sense that there are so many. In general, I'm against the death penalty because there's so many innocent people that end up.
There's tons of reform that's got to be done about that. Yeah. I think actually one I guess nice thing about this movie, or maybe one thing that this movie doesn't really shy away from is showing like how there are definitely still flaws in the justice system. Like it's like where the prosecuting attorney is essentially like, we're not really fighting for, we take like sleazy bargains all the time
Right.
because
Yeah.
of reasons, and it's like there's definitely like a lot that still needs to get changed in that. Um, and
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
I do like having it have the, and again, maybe some of this is just a little bit too naive in some ways, but I do appreciate the idea that the truth will out eventually,
Hmm.
right? And that's not always the case, I know, but it's nice to have, it's I think important to still have that as an ideal to strive towards.
Actual
um
justice. Yeah.
yeah. um because there's so much of it that just doesn't happen still. um and I think that's something that, when it does, should be applauded, you know but
Yeah, I mean, there's so many true crime shows I've watched where that happens all the time. It's like so
mm,
often they'll ask for a plea deal. It's like we want it's like they almost know they don't have enough evidence to convict them,
yeah,
but it's like maybe they would. So the threat of that, so they hold that over their head. It's like
right.
we want you to basically say that you're guilty of this, but
Hmm.
we'll let you off with like a deal on it, even if they like
Right.
truly believe that they didn't do it. It's like, no, we want you to say I'm guilty of this crime, but then you won't actually have to serve any time in,
Well,
in jail.
and a lot of pleas are also to free up money and time,
Mm-hmm.
because there's just so many, there's so
Because they
many
don't want to
people.
take it to trial. Yeah.
Because trials are costly, trials are there's all kinds of expense and cost, and it's like there, some of that's messed up, because it's like, you should be putting monetary value on a lot of that, but the thing is, at the
Right.
end of the day, time is money, and the thing is, for a lot of legal proceedings, you have to have a certain period of time to have all the details come out, and it's just like, yeah, it's tough. It's like one of those things where it's like, I don't think we're ever gonna get there. I mean, the realist in me says that we'll probably never get there, but
Yeah.
it's something to continue to strive toward. Like, I think striving towards truth and justice is still to be pursued, even though it's hard, even though it's difficult, even though it's expensive.
Yeah.
Um,
This damn dude on the freaking what was that movie we just watched for based on the serial killer who
oh, the
basically
good, all good things.
all good things. That guy basically lived a whole life without being sentenced,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that doesn't happen by accident. Like he did
no,
underhanded things, basically to get out of it, and the same thing happens in reverse. Like someone doesn't wrongfully get locked up for 30 years of their life for a crime they
right,
didn't commit. That doesn't happen by accident. It's always some sort of like mishandling of something along the way
right,
that causes it, and
right.
there's a lot of
It's
work
like
to do.
that's it's the problem is that people are. It's hard because we're flawed. People are flawed, and as a result, even though we hold ideals that are as perfect as we try to make them, they still also have flaws because we are also flawed.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where it's like, but at the same time, like, that's one of those, that's why I always want to be like, but it's still important as society to still strive towards that ideal, strive towards, as best we can possibly, get to perfection in that idea of it, in terms of how we try to get in our justice system when people are wronged and when things like this happen. But yeah.
Right. Um, I found it
So.
interesting towards the end of the case that the defense, when we were talking about the case
Mm,
about the people who witnessed
mm,
uh, this happening and cheered it on,
mm,
that was really interesting. The defense, they seemingly had multiple witnesses to like help their case. Between the friend and the bartender that we didn't see, it was like off screen. But then in like their
yeah.
closing arguments, they were like, "It all comes down to whether you believe Ken or not." I'm like, why did you just
Well,
reduce your whole
because
argument down to that? Because
because
clearly that didn't
bec-
work.
because the other witnesses were more positive on the side of the defense.
The
Like
defense or
it
the
yeah, to the so like because those other people didn't really have much, like they were witnesses, quote unquote, but they didn't really have much that was relevant to the case because they weren't in the room,
Right.
right? There was only like a couple there. Ken was the only person that was there and saw it all happen. Whereas these other people were just, they didn't really know what they saw. They were, it was one of those things where it's like it was somewhat imperfect witnesses in that regard. So that's why it did sort of come down to that.
Right, but I thought it was
Um,
funny that the defense was arguing, reduced their argument to being Ken,
yeah,
because yeah, they ultimately did believe Ken, so it worked against them.
yeah. Well, they
Um,
thought that the idea that because Ken wasn't, yeah, I guess they thought that because Ken was young and maybe didn't know what he saw or something. I think that was the idea where it's like like, he claimed he knew what he saw, but these other guys in here say they also knew what they saw, and they don't say it was it was a rape. So who do you believe? It's basically like, who do you believe? Do you believe that our men here, the defense, or do you believe this one kid who says he knows what he saw?
yeah, well, I believe the kid though. He seemed pretty
Yeah,
authentic to
yeah,
me.
yeah. He seemed like he was pretty forthright and honest.
Though it is interesting the whole framing of the movie. It's like it's clear that Ken was no perfectly good egg here either. Like he was there
No,
for so long watching that, and
right?
it's one of those things you see on his face where he's like he obviously wasn't enjoying it, but it's just kind of like a paralyzed reaction, I
He's sort of
guess.
like
But
shocked that it was all happening,
at the
and
same time, it's like
yeah,
he could have done it a lot earlier. He could have called a lot earlier, and wouldn't have had to go on that long.
or like I don't know, maybe tried to
Did something,
stop,
yeah,
risk personal injury
yeah.
to stop. I don't know. I mean, they're all strangers to you, but it's still like a horribly shocking thing going on. Would you
Crazy,
not?
crazy that just went
Yeah,
on, and yeah, there's so many other people in this bar that could have like I don't know, maybe yeah, done something or even checked out to what was going on in the other room.
right.
But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's my thing where I'm conflicted with this movie is it's not
So
exactly an enjoyable
I,
watch,
no, it's
but
not. But I think I like movies that are willing to tackle stuff that isn't enjoyable
yeah.
necessarily, but I think are still important to sort of tackle. Because I believe this was actually based on a real. This is sort of based
Is it?
on a case. Yeah, I don't think it's like, it's not like specifically like this is based on this case, but I think it used a case where something similar to this happened as sort of the going off point to sort of spin its own narrative. I think I
Because
think
I
that
would have expected in
is,
the beginning, like based on a true story,
yeah.
but
Well, this is also before the era where that happened super frequently, because this was the 80s, so
mm,
they didn't. That was not as much of a big talking point. Also, why do I know that? Why do I know the name? I knew the name of the director, and I don't know why. They did do their. Yeah, I'm just looking here. They did do their research. Um, Topor, the screenwriter, interviewed 30 rape victims and numerous rapists, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and medical professionals.
hmm,
Um,
good. That's good.
the screenwriter is like, Jonathan and I looked at a lot of old films. We couldn't find one that had explored this subject particularly. There are almost no movies where the subject of the movie is rape. There are many movies that have a rape incident in them, but this movie is about rape. There's no other subject. It's about two
Yeah.
women. There's no man who comes to rescue them. It's a very tough subject. That is actually something that that was one thing that I kept like. That's why Jodie Foster was so good in this movie, is like because she like unbelievable amounts of strength to just like continue living on, and not like she's clearly like not living an amazing, like overly spectacular life, but she's still finding a way to continue on
Yeah.
living after something so horrible happened to her. People said the men involved in the scene were all overwhelmingly upset. The guy who played the Scorpion said, following one of the filmings of the scenes, he bolted from the set and threw up in his trailer. It was meticulously rehearsed, so there would be no unpleasant surprises for anyone involved in the actual scene. Everyone felt very protective of Jodie Foster and worried how traumatic the situation would be for her. She stated that she does not remember filming the scene and completely blacked out and broke blood vessels in her right eye from crying during the shooting of the scene. And yeah, it was just the male actors were all horribly upset about even doing it too.
Tough. It's rough, yeah.
Complex ranked the rape scene from the film as number 16 on its list of the 53 most hard to watch scenes in movie history. It was very difficult to watch. It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So we do not want to downplay that for anyone. We should probably honestly have like a content warning when we're in the beginning of this. I mean, we don't really have that big of an audience, but like, still might not be the worst idea in the world to maybe have something like that. So this movie's got rape in it, a lot of it. So it's not like a lot of that, but it's all about that. So,
all about it. Yeah,
it's all about it. So
literally nothing else. It's every scene is reinforcing like
that story,
that topic. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it makes it tough for me. It's tough for me to say whether I recommend it or not.
Yeah, it's hard to say I would recommend it, but I think it was
very effective.
Yeah.
The boyfriend showed another example of how people cannot be compassionate at all.
Yeah. That scene made me so angry. That actually made me viscerally angry.
Yeah.
Like I got really angry at that scene.
The fact he was like, I'm bored. This is so getting so boring.
Yeah, when are you gonna get over with this? You're so boring. I'm like, bro, no.
Yeah, that's an easy toss.
No, this is not. This is not about you. None of this is about you right now.
Right. And I'm sure that was a toxic part of the culture at the time as well. It's just no, not as much care for the victim as you think. You think they'll just get over it. You know, give it a couple days.
She was 100% justified in everything she did. Like to a degree where it's like, should she have been drinking and smoking? I don't know. She was upset and she went to see her friend. It's everything all the other people did around her. It doesn't matter if she was there or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what state she was in or not. None of that should have happened to her. Like, especially because she said no multiple times. Like, stop. Like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And then they just, they went at it, and it was horrible.
Right.
It made me feel gross.
it's definitely very positive, empowering movie in that way. And it's where we're not ending the movie with her like just being stuck with this guy that she doesn't want to be with. Like she's like, no, cut ties. That's done. It was like instant. She cut the trash there.
Yeah.
And then she's like, no, I wanna testify. I want to tell my story. She was mad in the beginning when that was like taken from her, and they got this sentence that basically.
Right. It's like, you didn't even give me the chance to tell my story.
Yeah, and then she ultimately gets that, and she did really good on that. The witness stand as well it was a great scene too.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to also say is that I appreciated that the characterized of the defense attorneys was not cruel or evil. Like, you could make them be like, we don't believe her at all. They were as compassionate because they have to. That's their job is to have to come up with a defense for their clients, and they did a good job of. One of them did. There was one defense attorney who was kind of a douche, but the other ones were legitimately compassionate to her, and the situation. There was the one guy when he was asking questions, he was kind of a complete asshole about it. But where he was asking her questions, and he wasn't even looking at her. He was looking at the jury the whole time.
It was just I was like, add to his little argument he was making.
Yeah, I was like, get out of here with that. Get out of here.
I was like, so you didn't say help or rape? You just said
you didn't.
No.
Oh. Yeah, you didn't hate police or
kind of like looking at the jury like, isn't that curious? Huh?
That's interesting. That you just said no. That's interesting. It's interesting. That's not enough for me. That's not enough for me to think that these men should have stopped when you
Yeah.
said no.
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly, the witnesses were confused by her
By the
not
no.
yelling help. They were just saying no. It's like, oh, okay, it's part of the
Yeah,
show.
they were confused when the one guy was told to hold her down when she was clearly struggling.
Yeah, it was hard to really get a full sense of what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Sheesh.
let's give our final scores. This is tough. Wow. And synchronized. You
Hmm.
went down to 7.5. I went up to 7.5.
Yeah, because I sort of agree in that I think
It's
there's
tough.
a point there's a point of it where it's like I there's a point where some of the characterization feels maybe a little too cliche, but and I think that's maybe to the detriment of the movie. It is also um it also does feel a lot it does feel to a degree still a little bit of a product of its time, but I think
Yeah.
the arguments in terms of that it's spinning are still like the way she's depicted, she's in completely in the right the whole time. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of
That's the
awesome.
important distinction there. Yeah.
That's the important thing. I think that's awesome that the movie did that in 88. That it's like it's basically all the arguments that we're saying kind of like now and today where it's like she was told like nothing about her situation doesn't matter what she was dressed like. It doesn't matter what she had been doing if she was inebriated or whatever. People took advantage of her. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. This when you see somebody like that, you try to take care of them. You try to make sure that that doesn't happen. You don't take advantage of that situation. That's scum. That is scum that does that.
Yeah. And they
Worse than
don't.
scum.
Yeah, they don't mince words with it. They don't
Yeah.
sugarcoat it. They don't
Yeah.
try to make it make light of it at all.
Right.
So
Right.
I do appreciate it for that. I was still torn between 7.5.
Yeah.
Honestly, if we had more, like if I could do 7.25, that's probably what I would have went with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just because I'd find it very hard to recommend to anyone.
It's difficult to watch for sure. But at the same time, I think that her performance is amazing. It carries the whole movie. Like
It's
I think
essential.
she's
It's
yeah.
essential because the lesser actress, it could have really tanked the movie,
Yeah.
and it's feeling authentic and
Yeah.
the vulnerability of it. You know,
Right.
that's tough. Yeah, it's gonna be one of the toughest scenes to film,
Right.
let alone watch.
Right.
So
I yeah, hey, that was the I there's a degree that I hope that's the heaviest film that we ever have to cover on this show, you know? I mean, I'm all for, you know, watching stuff that is not necessarily fun or entertaining all the time.
yeah,
I can appreciate that, but at the same time, I it's tough to deal with a lot of that in a short period of time. That's why I was happy that we also reviewed Knuckles
yeah,
at the
yeah. Two
same
polar
time. So
opposite things.
the two of the polar, yeah, extremely polar opposites. So
We had the
uh,
accused, 7.5. Tarqaron score 7.5. That's our seal of approval right there.
yeah,
But definitely not for everybody.
yeah, no,
But the wheel demands what the wheel demands of us. Sometimes it gives us easy days.
hmm it
Sometimes it gives us hard.
didn't give us the easiest day there. Yeah, so
But as always, we're gonna try to do chance time at least once a month, and we'll come back next month with another one, and we'll see what it gives us then. All right.
uh-huh.
If you enjoyed this video, what videos should our viewers watch next?
Go check out our review of. I'm trying to think of something that we did that had sort of heavy subject matter. But maybe a little lighter. Well, go check out a review of All Good Things. I guess
Yeah.
check that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Check that out. It was another chance time as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, and if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment letting us know your thoughts. As always, we'll respond and read those comments in the next episode of the Tarqaron podcast that we record. All right, so hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we upload. Click the link in the description for our social media, and take care of yourself.
All right.
All right.